Admiral Na sat in her command chair, sipping her morning coffee when the priority alert screamed across the bridge. The red lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. At 4 in the morning, urgent transmissions never brought good news. "Admiral, incoming distress signal from the Outer Rim," called out Lieutenant Kim from the communications station. His voice carried the tension that always came with emergency calls. "Put it through," Na replied, setting down her coffee cup. The holographic display in front of her sparked to life, static crackling like a dying campfire. The image was barely stable. Through the interference, she could make out the face of an Altarian commander. His blue skin was pale with fear, and his large eyes darted nervously off-screen. Behind him, warning lights flashed, and alarms wailed. "This is Colony Station Kepler, 442, the alien commander's voice shook with desperation. "We are under attack by the Vorth swarm. Our orbital defenses have fallen. The surface installations are overrun. We have over 2 million civilians trapped here. Requesting immediate evacuation assistance," before the transmission died. The hologram flickered once and went black, leaving only empty space where the terrified commander had been moments before. Na stared at the dark display for several long seconds. Around her, the bridge crew waited in tense silence. They all knew what a Vorth swarm attack meant. The bioships didn't just conquer worlds. They consumed them completely, leaving nothing but empty space where entire civilizations once thrived. "Lieutenant Kim, get me a direct line to Admiral Wu of the 7th Fleet," Na ordered, her voice cutting through the silence. "Use emergency protocols. Priority Alpha clearance." "Yes, ma'am," Kim replied, his fingers flying over his console. "Admiral, the Galactic Council has already responded to similar distress calls from that sector. They've classified the situation as unsalvageable." Na's jaw tightened. She had read those reports. 17 star systems had already fallen to the Vorth. The Council's response was always the same: too far away, too dangerous, too late to save anyone. They preferred to write off entire worlds rather than risk their precious fleets. "The Council thinks in terms of acceptable losses," Na said, standing up from her chair. "But we're human. We don't abandon people who call for help." Around the bridge, her crew straightened with purpose. They had served under NA for 3 years. They knew that look in her eyes. When humans heard a cry for help, distance and danger became mere obstacles to overcome, not reasons to surrender. The impossible was just another word for Tuesday. Luna Station had never seen anything like it. Within 6 hours of Admiral Na's call, the massive orbital facility transformed into a hive of controlled chaos. Dock workers who had been enjoying their morning shift suddenly found themselves loading ammunition that wasn't supposed to exist. Engineers scrambled to fuel ships that had been in routine maintenance just hours before. The 7th Expeditionary Fleet was humanity's ace in the hole. These weren't the pretty ships they showed off to alien diplomats. These were the vessels that kept other species awake at night, wondering what humans were really capable of. Captain Jin walked onto the bridge of the TDF, indomitable as his crew prepared for launch. The massive dreadnought hummed with barely contained power. Around him, his officers moved with the kind of deadly efficiency that came from years of training for exactly this type of mission. "Status report," Jin called out, settling into his command chair. "All systems green, sir," replied his weapons officer. "Ammunition at full capacity. Engineering reports. We can push the engines 20% beyond normal limits if needed." Through the bridge windows, Jin could see the rest of the fleet forming up. Massive carriers launched squadron after squadron of fighters. Smaller destroyers darted between the larger ships like protective wolves. And then there were the Ragnarok-class vessels. Even human engineers got nervous around those ships. They were officially classified as deep space mining equipment, but everyone knew better. The 3 massive vessels looked more like flying cities than warships, their hulls bristling with equipment that definitely wasn't designed for asteroid mining. Behind Jin, Admiral Wu coordinated the entire fleet movement from his flagship, the Prometheus. The Admiral's calm voice carried across multiple communication channels, orchestrating hundreds of ships with the precision of a symphony conductor. "Sir," Lieutenant Su called from the communication station, "we're getting requests from the alien observers. They want our tactical assessment of the situation." Jin glanced at the small group of alien diplomats who had been stationed on Luna Station to monitor human military activities. They looked terrified. Their large eyes were wide with disbelief as they watched humanity's war machines spring into action. "Tell them this is a standard rescue mission," Jin said with a slight smile. Lieutenant Su paused, then spoke quietly into his headset. After a moment, he looked back at Jin with confusion. "Sir, the Altarian liaison just went silent, according to the translator. Their language doesn't have separate words for rescue mission and suicide run. To them, they're the same thing." Jin's smile widened. That explained a lot about why other species gave up so easily. They couldn't imagine rushing toward danger to save strangers. But that was exactly what made humans different. The human fleet had been traveling through hyperspace for 3 weeks when the sensors picked up something unexpected. A scattered group of ships drifted at the edge of their detection range, moving slowly away from the Kepler system. "Admiral," called out Scanner Operator Park from his station, "we've got refugee vessels ahead. They're badly damaged, sir. Looks like they've been running for days." Admiral Wu studied the tactical display. The ships were clearly Altarian design, but they were barely holding together. Hull breaches had been patched with emergency foam. Several vessels were missing entire sections, held together by nothing more than hope and determination. "Bring us alongside the lead ship," Wu ordered. "Prepare for diplomatic contact." The refugee fleet's commander was a tall, thin Altarian named Veltar. When he was brought aboard the Prometheus, his usually proud species looked broken. His blue skin had turned almost gray with exhaustion, and his large eyes held the haunted look of someone who had seen too much death. "You should not have come," he said through the translator, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't understand what you're flying toward." Wu gestured for Veltar to sit in the conference room. The alien commander's hands shook as he activated a small data device, projecting holographic images that made the human officers lean forward with interest. "The Vorth swarm consumed 17 systems before reaching ours," Veltar explained. "Not conquered, consumed. They leave nothing behind. No survivors, no structures, nothing." The images showed massive bioships that looked more like living creatures than vessels. They moved in coordinated swarms, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life. "They don't use technology like we do," Veltar continued. "Their ships are alive. They breed new vessels, grow new weapons, and there are so many of them." "How many are we talking about?" Wu asked, genuinely curious. Veltar's eyes widened. "At least 10 million combat vessels in the main fleet. Countless smaller attack organisms. They overwhelm any defense through pure numbers." The human bridge crew exchanged quick glances. Communications Officer Yi bit his lip to keep from smiling. Navigation Officer Choi raised an eyebrow. Even the normally serious Weapons Officer Lee looked pleased. "Sir," he asked carefully, "should we inform the rest of the fleet about the enemy numbers?" Admiral Wu nodded thoughtfully. "Send it out as a morale update. Tell them we'll finally have a proper fight on our hands." Veltar stared at the humans in disbelief. In his language, facing impossible odds was called madness. But humans had a different word for it. Tuesday. The transition from hyperspace always made stomachs lurch. But nothing could have prepared the human fleet for what waited at the edge of the Kepler system. Space itself seemed to writhe with movement, as millions of Vorth bioships filled the void like a living nightmare. "Sweet mother of ... Scanner Operator Park whispered, staring at his displays in amazement. The numbers kept climbing as his sensors tried to process the sheer scale of the enemy fleet. The Vorth vessels looked nothing like traditional starships. They pulsed and breathed like massive sea creatures, their organic hulls shifting colors from deep purple to sickly green. Some were the size of small moons, while others swarmed in clouds of millions, each no bigger than a fighter craft. "Admiral," Park called out, running his calculations for the third time to make sure. "Confirmed enemy count shows 10,000 to 1 odds against us." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then Admiral Wu nodded calmly, as if Park had just reported the weather. "Acceptable odds," Wu said, settling back in his command chair. "Deploy gravitational platforms. I want them targeting the center of their largest formations." Around the bridge, his crew sprang into action with practiced efficiency. This was the moment they had trained for their entire careers. Communications Officer Yi coordinated with the fleet while Weapons Officer Li prepared their most devastating surprise. The gravitational platforms were humanity's secret weapon, while other species focused on bigger guns and stronger armor. Human scientists had learned to weaponize gravity itself. The platforms looked harmless enough, just small, dark spheres that the fleet deployed between themselves and the enemy. Then they activated. The effect was invisible, but devastating. Gravity wells suddenly appeared in the heart of the Vorth formations, pulling the bioships in multiple directions at once. The organic vessels, designed to move like living creatures, had no defense against forces that could bend space-time itself. Millions of smaller Vorth fighters were torn apart instantly. Larger bioships found themselves spinning helplessly as conflicting gravity fields ripped them from their formations. The perfectly coordinated swarm that had destroyed 17 civilizations suddenly looked like scattered leaves in a hurricane. "Direct hit on their primary formation," reported Tactical Officer Min with satisfaction. "They're completely disorganized." Captain Jin watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the Vorth tried to regroup. Their bioships moved in patterns. That seemed random to human eyes, but Jin could see they were trying to reform their attack formations. "They're regrouping," he announced to his crew. "All ships initiate evasive maneuvers." But the Vorth had spent millions of years perfecting tactics against conventional enemies. They had never faced humans before. The Vorth had used the same attack pattern for millions of years, and it had never failed them. Like a massive wave of living death, millions of biofighters surged forward in their traditional overwhelming assault. This tactic had shattered the defenses of 17 different civilizations. Planets had fallen, entire species had been consumed, and no military force had ever found an answer to the sheer crushing weight of numbers. But the Vorphe had never fought humans before. "Incoming swarm attack," called out Tactical Officer Min from his station. Enemy fighters numbering in the millions, approaching from all vectors. "Point defense systems online," Admiral Wu replied calmly. "All ships activate defensive grids." What happened next would have been impossible for any other species to achieve. Every single human vessel, from the massive dreadnoughts down to the smallest escort ships, suddenly bristled with weapons. Not the big guns meant for ship-to-ship combat, but thousands of smaller systems designed for one purpose: to create impenetrable walls of fire. The space around the human fleet erupted in a deadly light show. Millions of projectiles streamed out in coordinated patterns, forming overlapping fields of destruction that no living thing could possibly survive. The point defense grid was so dense that it looked like the humans had surrounded themselves with stars. The Vorth biofighters flew straight into this wall of death and simply ceased to exist. Their organic armor, evolved over millions of years to resist energy weapons, meant nothing against the concentrated firepower. Wave after wave of attackers vanished into clouds of organic debris that drifted harmlessly past the human ships. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Yi, with barely contained excitement. "The enemy's losing fighters faster than they can deploy them. Fighter squadrons, you're clear for engagement." Captain Jin transmitted to his pilots aboard the waiting Human fighters. Commander So acknowledged the order and led her squadron out into space. The human fighters moved like nothing the Vorth had ever seen. Instead of charging forward in straight lines like every other species, they flowed through space like a pack of wolves, each pilot instinctively covering the others in patterns that seemed to change every second. The Vorth bioships tried to adapt, but human fighter tactics defied everything they understood about warfare. One moment the squadron would split into multiple groups. The next, they would converge on a single target from 6 different directions, simultaneously. Enemy formation is breaking apart. So reported over the comm system as her squadron tore through another group of They can't figure out how to counter our attack patterns. For the first time in their species' history, the Vorth swarm began to falter. The Vorth were not stupid. After losing millions of fighters to human defenses, they quickly changed their strategy. Massive bioships, each the size of a city, began moving forward instead of the smaller swarm fighters. These creatures had thick armor, plating, and powerful weapons that could punch through normal starship hulls. But humans didn't believe in fighting fair. Engineer Min was the first to come up with a creative solution. Down in the cargo bay of his ship, he looked at the standard shipping containers and saw something else entirely. Strip out everything inside, he told his team. Fill them with dense metal cores and program the guidance systems for impact. Within an hour, the human fleet was launching cargo containers like massive bullets. The improvised kinetic missiles slammed into Vorth bioships with devastating effect. What had been simple storage boxes became weapons that could crack open alien armor like eggshells. Maintenance. Chief Ho took a different approach. The mining lasers on human ships were designed to cut through asteroids, but Ho realized they could cut through enemy ships just as easily. Reroute power from the secondary systems, he ordered his crew. I want these mining beams hot enough to slice a moon in half. The modified mining equipment turned into ship-to-ship weapons that the Vorth had no defense against. Their bioships had evolved to resist traditional energy weapons. But industrial cutting tools were something completely different. Sir, Weapons Officer DA called out from his station. We're detecting incoming boarding pods from the enemy. Admiral, who smiled coldly. Deploy our own boarding pods. The Altarian observers on the bridge looked confused. They watched in growing horror as humans began launching what appeared to be modified escape capsules directly at Vorth bioships. Are they committing suicide? Commander Veltar whispered. But these weren't suicide attacks. The escape capsules had been converted into assault vehicles. Human marines inside cut their way through Vorth bioship hulls like they were opening cans. Once inside, they fought through the organic corridors with weapons designed for close combat. The Vorth had never experienced boarding actions before. Their bioships were living creatures. The idea of enemies cutting their way inside was like having parasites attack your own body. Then the massive queen ship arrived. The creature was the size of a small moon, its biohull pulsing with ancient power. It had personally led the destruction of 17 civilizations. The queen ship entered the system confident that these strange new enemies would fall, just like all the others, but it had never faced Deathworlders before. The battle had been raging for hours, but the 3 massive Ragnarok-class vessels had remained eerily silent at the back of the human fleet. Even the human crews weren't entirely sure what these ships were capable of. They were officially listed as deep space mining equipment, but everyone knew that was just paperwork. Admiral Wu had been waiting for the right moment. As the Vorth Queen ship moved into the system like a living mountain of flesh and bioarmor, he knew that moment had finally arrived. All ships, this is Admiral Wu. His voice carried across every communication channel in the fleet. I am issuing authorization. Omega-7. Ragnarok-class vessels are now weapons-free. The 3 mysterious ships suddenly came to life. Running lights that had been dark throughout the journey began glowing with an ominous red light. Deep within their hulls, machinery that had been sleeping started to hum with barely contained power. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the first Ragnarok vessel, watching as his crew prepared systems that had never been used in actual combat. The ship around him began to vibrate as massive generators spun up to full power. "Sir," called out his weapons officer, "primary array is charging. We'll have full power in 30 seconds. Lee studied the tactical display. The Queen ship was massive beyond belief, a bio-creature that had lived for millions of years and consumed entire star systems. Its armor had evolved to resist every type of weapon the galaxy had ever produced, but it had never faced human mining equipment. "Target the Queen ship," Lee ordered calmly. "Channel all available power to the primary array." The Ragnarok's main weapon had been designed to crack planets apart for asteroid mining. The focused beam could slice through solid rock like it was butter, breaking apart entire moons when mining operations needed access to their cores. "Firing," announced the weapons officer. The beam that erupted from the Ragnarok was invisible to the naked eye, but its effects were instantly devastating. The energy lance struck the Queen ship's bioarmor and simply erased it from existence. Millions of years of evolution, armor that had withstood the weapons of 17 different civilizations, meant nothing against a tool designed to split worlds. The Queen ship's death scream echoed across every frequency as the massive creature vessel began breaking apart. Its biohull cracked like an egg, spilling organic fluid into the vacuum of space. The remaining Vorth fleet, seeing their ancient leader destroyed in seconds, turned and fled in terror. The unstoppable swarm had finally met something more dangerous than themselves. The Vorth retreat wasn't organized, it was pure panic. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years now fled in every direction, abandoning their formations and scattering like leaves in a storm. But the humans weren't about to let them escape. "All ships, maintain pursuit," Admiral Wu ordered calmly. "We don't leave loose ends." For the next 3 days, the human fleet methodically hunted down every fleeing Vorth vessel. It wasn't a battle anymore, it was pest control. Human ships would track down isolated bioships, hiding behind asteroids, or trying to escape through hyperspace, and eliminate them with cold efficiency. Captain Jin watched his tactical display as another group of Vorth stragglers tried to hide in the asteroid belt of the second system. "Target those bioships behind the large asteroid," he ordered. "Use the mining charges." The improvised weapons that had started as mining equipment continued to prove devastatingly effective. Explosive charges meant for breaking apart asteroids tore through Vorth bioarmor like it was paper. "Sir," Communications Officer Yi called out from his station, "we're picking up Vorth transmissions. They're broadcasting on emergency frequencies." "Put it through the translator," Wu replied. The bridge speakers crackled to life with alien voices filled with terror. The translation was choppy, but the message was clear. "Warning, all hives. Avoid the third spiral arm. ... The pack hunters from the death world have awakened. ... They turn their tools into weapons. ... They hunt not for territory, but to protect others. ... Flee. ... Flee while you can. ... Admiral Wu nodded with grim satisfaction. "Good. Let every Vorth in the galaxy hear that message." The hunt continued through the third system, where the last remnants of the One's mighty swarm were cornered near a dying star. The human fleet surrounded them methodically, giving no quarter. Across the galaxy, other species monitored the battle through long-range sensors and intelligence networks. The Krill Dominion, known for their aggressive expansion, quietly recalled their invasion fleets. The Shattuck Empire canceled their planned attacks on 3 neighboring systems. Word spread quickly. Through diplomatic channels, the humans had just defeated the galaxy's most feared predator swarm using modified mining equipment and cargo containers. They had turned everyday industrial tools into weapons of war and made it look like routine maintenance. Species that had spent centuries building military technology realized they had been thinking too small. The humans didn't just have better weapons, they had a completely different mindset about what could be weaponized. The galaxy's newest members had just become its most terrifying protectors. The journey back to Altarian space felt different than the urgent rush to battle. The human fleet moved at a steady pace, their cargo bays filled with rescued colonists and prisoners of war that everyone had written off as lost forever. Medical teams worked around the clock to treat survivors who had been trapped on bioships, many of whom hadn't seen sunlight in months. Admiral Wu stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the Altarian homeworld grow larger on the main screen. Behind them, the 7th Fleet maintained perfect formation, their hulls scarred from battle, but their spirits high. They had done the impossible, and they knew it. The reception at Altarian space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of ships from dozens of species had gathered to witness the return of the human fleet. News of their victory had spread faster than hyperspace travel, carried by refugees and intercepted communications. The Galactic Council was struggling to process the after-action reports. Species that had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. The newcomers from Earth had just accomplished what everyone considered impossible. The memorial ceremony took place on the largest Altarian space station. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, many of them studying the human officers with new respect and barely hidden fear. Commander Veltar approached Admiral N.A. during the ceremony, his large eyes reflecting genuine curiosity mixed with, "AHO, your species continues to fascinate us," he said through the translator. "When we told you the odds were 10,000 to 1, you called it a real challenge. When we said the mission was impossible, you treated it like routine pest control." Admiral Na smiled, adjusting her dress uniform. "We're just getting started, Commander. This was a rescue mission. Wait until you see what we do when we're actually angry." The implications of her words weren't lost on the gathered alien diplomats. Several species representatives quietly excused themselves to send urgent messages to their homeworlds. Within a month, 17 different species had submitted formal requests for human protection contracts. The Galactic Council found itself dealing with a completely new political reality. The galaxy's newest members had become its most feared guardians in the dark corners of space. Surviving Vorth transmitted warnings to their scattered kin. Beware the Deathworld pack. They don't hunt for territory or resources. They hunt because strangers called for help, and they answered. The age of human dominance had begun.